Hello, did you know that your school has or is about to start a zero waste schools program in your lunchroom? This means that instead of throwing all of your lunchroom materials in the garbage, you can reduce, reuse, recycle, or compost them, which makes a really big difference for our planet. This video will teach you how to do it and why it matters so much. Let's start with the big picture of our planet. This photo of our one and only planet Earth reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but just a small part of it. The air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat all come from the Earth. What happens to the Earth happens to us. Scientist and environmental activist Jane Goodall said, "What you do makes a difference. You have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." When it comes to our planet, what you choose to do makes a big difference for our environment. Whether you decide to pick up litter, teach people about climate change, or reduce your waste, the decisions you make matter to the health of our planet. Without composting and recycling, your school lunchroom probably looks something like this. Just one day of lunch can produce a huge pile of garbage. Just imagine how much garbage your school creates in an entire year. Where does all that garbage go? When you throw something in the garbage, it gets sent to a landfill. Landfills have to be maintained for a very long time and cause lots of environmental problems. The landfills in our region are filling up, so the garbage often has to be transported to new landfills that are farther away. But you can help your school send much less garbage to the landfill by recycling and composting using a sorting station. By using a sorting station, you can help your school get closer to zero waste in your lunchroom or wherever you eat. Sorting stations can look different in different schools. This picture shows one example. A sorting station has a separate bin for each type of material. There's a bin for liquids, a bin for recycling, one for landfill garbage, and one for compost. And if your school has trays, there will also be a table for stacking trays. Every bin has a sign above it with pictures to help you remember what goes where. Let's take a close-up look at each sign to learn what belongs and what doesn't belong in each bin. The first bin is for leftover liquids. The best thing to do is to try to finish your drink. But if you have leftovers, pour out every last drop into the liquids bin. Since milk and other liquids should not go into the recycling bin, it is really important to empty all the drink containers first. Here are some students showing how it's done. Next is the recycling bin. This is where you can put your empty drink containers, like milk and juice cartons, drink boxes, plastic drink containers, metal cans, and glass bottles. You can also put clean, dry paper and cardboard in the recycling bin. Things that do not belong in recycling are shown at the bottom of the sign. No food or liquids, or containers that have lots of food or liquid in them. No plastic utensils or straws, no plastic wrappers, no juice pouches, no plastic bags, and no plastic number 6 or styrofoam. These items would contaminate the recycling, and if there is too much contamination, it ruins all the other recycling. Here is a photo showing how to recycle an empty milk carton, and a photo of nicely sorted recycling. Next is the landfill sign. This is where you should put all the things that you can't recycle or compost. This includes all plastic wrappers, plastic wrap, plastic coated cardboard, empty fruit cups, plastic bags, plastic number 6 and styrofoam, and disposable plastic forks and straws. You should pick all of the landfill garbage items off of your tray or out of your lunchbox, then put them into the landfill bin.
The next bin in the sorting station is for things that can be composted. This includes all food scraps, even meat, bones, and cheese. You can also compost food soiled paper like napkins and paper lunch bags if any of you do backyard composting at home. You know that you can only add fruit and vegetable scraps or plants to your backyard compost bin. But with commercial composting, you can add all food scraps and some food soiled paper. Just be careful to keep everything else out of the compost bin, especially plastic. First, make sure that all the food scraps from your tray or plate are put into the compost container. Try to gently knock off any food scraps before stacking your food trays. The last stop in the sorting station is a table for stacking your lunch trays. After you've gone through and disposed of your food scraps, stack your trays here. Stacked trays take up much less space in the compost or a landfill bin, saving bags and trips to the dumpster.
These students show how to stack the plates neatly. Some schools also have a share table located at the start of their sorting station or somewhere else in the lunchroom. A share table is a place to put food items you were served with your school meal but did not eat. The purpose of a share table is to prevent good food from being wasted.
What kind of foods can be put on a share table? Generally, you can put uneaten whole fruit or unopened packaged foods, but check the share table sign at your school to know for sure. No food from home should go on a share table, and no food without packaging or reopenable packaging should be put on the share table either.
Here are a few photos showing what a share table can look like. What happens to the food you put on a share table? Some schools allow other students to take food from the share table to eat during lunch. Some schools may use the extra food left on a share table for snacks or future meals. And some schools donate the extra food to a local food pantry. Either way, a share table is a great way to reduce wasted food. So let's do a little practice with a quiz game. If you didn't finish your milk, where should you pour out your unfinished milk? Correct. You should pour out every last drop of leftover drink into the container for liquids. Where do empty milk cartons and empty drink boxes belong? If you said recycling, you are right. Be sure to remove the straws from them first. Plastic straws are not recyclable. Where do straws and plastic sporks belong? That's right. These items belong in the landfill bin. Pick these items off your lunch tray and put them in the landfill bin. How about plastic wrappers, juice pouches, and ketchup packets? Where do they go? You got it. All plastic wrappers belong in the landfill bin. Where do food scraps like apple cores and sandwich scraps go? Great. All food scraps belong in the compost bin. What about paper napkins? Correct. They go in the compost bin too. All food scraps and uncoated paper products belong in the compost bin.
What should you do with your lunch plates or trays? After you tap off the food from your tray in the compost container, neatly stack it so it takes up less space. After lunch, your stacked trays will be added to the compost or landfill bin depending on what they are made of.
And if your school has a share table, where should you put whole fruit or unopened packaged foods that were served at school but you didn't eat? That's right. If you don't eat them and you can't take them with you, you should put them on the share table so that someone else can enjoy eating them. It's super important to put everything in the correct bin. Contamination can ruin recycling and compost. Plastic does not decompose and become soil. Wildlife like this turtle might visit a compost facility and can mistake plastic for food or get tangled in it, which can injure or kill them. So please keep plastics out of the compost bin. And here's a beautiful photo showing everything where it belongs. To save time in line, there are a few things you should do before you get up from the table. First, try to finish all your food and drink. Then be sure to take the straws out of your milk carton or drink box. It's much easier to do this when you're seated at your table. Then before you get up, take a look at what is on your plate or in your lunchbox and think about where these items will go. So we just talked about how to compost and recycle in your school lunchroom. Now let's get to why it matters so much. Why what you do each and every day in the lunchroom makes such a big difference to our environment. The difference is in what happens to these materials after you sort them. Let's take a look. What happens to the leftover liquids after lunch? They get poured down a drain by the custodian. And everything poured down the drain goes through pipes to a local wastewater treatment facility. Once treated, the water is emptied into a nearby river. All of the other materials you sort get taken out to the carts or dumpsters in your school parking lot after lunch is over. The recycling, compost, and landfill garbage each have their own cart or dumpster, so they stay sorted. What happens to the recyclables next? When materials are recycled, they get made into something new. A truck first transports the materials to a recycling facility where they are sorted by material type. The sorted materials get shipped to different recycling factories to be made into new products, new raw materials for new products. Using recycled materials as ingredients to make new products uses a lot less energy and means we don't need to cut down more trees or mine the earth for new materials. In these ways, recycling helps prevent climate change. What happens to the landfill garbage next? A truck first transports the garbage to a materials recovery facility. Then the garbage is hauled to a landfill where it gets buried and requires years of maintenance. What happens to the food scraps and other organic materials after lunch? A truck transports them to a materials recovery facility. Then they are transported to a commercial composting facility where the food scraps are mixed with yard waste and turned into compost. The finished compost is sold to be added to garden soil. Composting is basically a way of recycling food scraps. Food scraps get eaten by soil organisms such as worms and bacteria and fungi. This turns the food scraps into finished compost, which looks and smells like rich soil. Adding compost to garden soil is a wonderful way to build soil health. And healthy soil can be used to grow healthy food, which in turn makes more food scraps, and the cycle continues. Do you know another really important reason to compost? Composting reduces greenhouse gases that cause climate change. While recycling and composting are great ways to send less stuff to landfills, it's even better to first try to reduce and reuse. The zero waste hierarchy helps us remember this. Reduce and reuse are at the top and are the most preferred ways to manage materials. If you can't reduce or reuse, however, the next best thing to do is recycle or compost. The last thing we should do is bury resources in a landfill. Here are some ways you can reduce and reuse if you eat school meals. Don't take packaged items like spork packets or ketchup packets if you don't need them. To prevent wasting food, don't take food you won't eat and eat the food you take, or set it on a share table if your school has one. And keep in mind that milk is not a requirement. If your school has reusable trays and utensils, encourage them to be used. It takes far less energy and water to wash and reuse foodware than to make and transport single-use foodware. If you bring a lunch from home, here are ways you can reduce and reuse and turn a wasteful lunch into a zero-waste lunch. Instead of buying single-use items like drink boxes, water bottles, and disposable bags, pack a zero-waste lunch with reusable containers instead. Basically, do your best to avoid single-use products, even if they are recyclable or compostable. This prevents waste and will save your family money. And to prevent wasting food, take home leftovers in your lunchbox. Foods like crackers and whole fruit will make for a good snack later, and it shows the person who packs your lunch what you ate. Remember what Jane Goodall said, what you do makes a difference. With the Zero Waste Schools program, You all have the power to make a big difference for our environment by choosing to reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost. Here's an example of the difference that 860 students at one school make. In one day, they produce 389 pounds of materials in their lunchroom and kitchen. But with composting, recycling, and a share table, only 57 pounds of that went to the landfill. Keeping all of those food scraps, milk, and recycling out of landfills prevents about 32 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year. That's equivalent to keeping 6 cars off the road a year, or preventing 1,022 square feet of Arctic sea ice from melting. You can make an even bigger impact if you take what you learn at school and help your family go for zero waste at home. Getting to zero waste depends on you. Reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost at school and at home. And teach your family and friends how to get to zero waste. Thank you for making a difference.